Hello and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be doing a mid-course review of Unreal Engine 5 C++ game development on Udemy by Khan Alpar and GameDev.tv. And the first thing I want to talk about is why I'm doing this as a mid-course review instead of waiting till the end. And actually one of the pros of this course is that they seem to be really good about updating it. When I first started taking this course, it was actually a completely different set of content quite a while ago. And you can see down here, they've got original Unreal Engine 5 content. And they have effectively revamped the entire course since I started. So the initial set of projects that I built as part of the course have been completely redesigned, less so in function and more to work with properly with Unreal Engine 5.6. So they've redone the course for the latest version of Unreal Engine, which has made it a lot easier to continue. At one point, I actually stopped working through it because I was starting to run into places where the content just didn't line up with what was really out there. But they fixed all of that. And that is a real pro when you're looking at these things. You know, a lot of the time on Udemy, we're talking about a single course creator. You know, maybe they put out something really good, but they're not going to go back and take the time to rebuild that. But this does seem to be a team behind these. And because it's a team, they are taking the time to continue to update and keep these things up to speed, which is a huge pro. This is a really good beginner's guide to Unreal Engine, and it's an okay beginner's guide to C++. So if you're just starting out, you don't need any existing C++ knowledge. You don't need any existing Unreal Engine knowledge. I would definitely wouldn't take this as a standalone way to learn C++, but you can walk in without really knowing any of either, and you're going to be able to successfully work through. The other thing that I feel like they've done really well with is they've done a really good job of setting up small places where they're going to describe what needs to get done, and then you go and implement. A lot of courses either stick with a full code along, which to be fair is a lot of what I put out there is just you typing along with me. Or they do a description of something that needs to turn into 100 lines of code, and then you're going and implementing. And if you aren't, up to speed enough to do that, you start to fall behind. And I feel like these guys did a really good job of kind of breaking things down into bite-sized chunks, still forcing you to do a little bit more yourself and take the time to try to do things without them walking you through it. But they're small enough pieces that it's all realistic to be able to do as long as you've been, paying attention and following along with the course. So I feel like this has probably been one of the best courses I've come across on Udemy for hitting that balance of what they're asking you to do and then what they're explaining to you as you're taking the course. Now, with that out of the way, let me just run through a few of the projects that I have gotten to implement as part of this course, because honestly, I can't think of anything better than seeing what you'll actually be building. This first one is Obstacle Assault. And what Obstacle Assault is it's basically going to be, and you can see some of the music. Let's see. Oh, I got a GPU crash there. Sweet. I'm going to leave that in the video because I think it's interesting to see. This was also one of the older projects. It has not been built, All right, let's try again. Let's see if we can launch this one. All right. So, Obstacle Assault is basically going to teach you the basics of making objects move in the world. So this is going to cover creating these physical objects in the Unreal Engine 5 world and then making them move around. And we're going to do that with C++. And then really all of this level design is just putting together a series of obstacles that you, the player, have to try to get around. And it is pretty challenging to do the way I've got it set up. So you do not have to watch me try to get through all of them. We'll take a swing at it. We'll see if I can still do it. All right. So that is the first game. In the original version of the course, they also had something called Warehouse Wreckage, which was basically just you throwing, like cannonballs at various things in a warehouse and sort of tearing it apart. In this latest version, it doesn't look like they included that. They just jumped straight into Obstacle Assault. And I'm going to assume the new version is similar to the old version. But this is where you really get into a lot of what Unreal Engine will let you do. The second game here is they've got it called Dungeon Escape. Now, the original version of this was a little bit different. It was called, let me see if I can find my copy of it. All right, I found the second project, which is now at the time it was called Crypt Raider. Now it's called something like Dungeon Escape, but I think it's effectively the same project. So I'm going to go ahead and play this level. And what you learn in this one is you learn a little bit about things like object grasping and manipulation. But I would also say it's where you start to get into things like lighting and, the ability to put lights in an environment and deal with shadows. And I threw the music in. That wasn't actually part of this one. I just wanted it to sound cool. But this is where you really start to get to play with a little bit more of that cinematic gaming. So we're going to grab the gargoyle here, and we're going to go drop it here, and that's going to open a gate. And then we go down into a dungeon. And this is much more level building than so we're supposed to be stealing this guy, so we grab him, and then the gate slams shut, which is kind of cool. And we've got to fake that out. So you can kind of see, if you think about game mechanics, we're really learning about object manipulation. We're learning about putting objects in proximity and getting those objects to react in some way to being in proximity. And then we can grab our statue and we can run out of the crypt. And there's no real game over stuff here. None of that yet. So that's the sum total of game 2. Game 3, which is the one that I just finished up, was originally called Toon Tanks and is now called something like Battle Blaster. But let's go grab the Toon Tanks. And this one for me starts to put together a lot more of what you would normally consider, game mechanics. So I'm going to go into Unreal and we're going to grab Toon Tanks. And I've opened this recently, so this should be fast. All right, here we go. So this is the second to last project. And this is the first one I'm showing that was built with their latest course content. So again, I wanted to go ahead and get a mid-course review out there because they continue to update it and I want to capture those updates. So this one's cool because it's one of the ones where we're going to get a little bit more of an active actor. And an actor is like a moving unit in the game, so we can drive our tank around here. It's also the first one where we're putting a little bit of work into building the actor. So, in those first couple, that's a not completely out of the box character, but we didn't have to construct it. The tank we did. They give you the graphics and all that, but then you get to construct your tank. It's also the first one where we're really going to involve sounds, as well as effects. So these are little things you don't normally think about in games, but things like that little smoke trail when the towers shoot at us. That's something you have to add. That's an effect that they, are teaching you how to do as part of this course. The sounds, the fact that it, makes noise when it fires off is something they're teaching you to do. If I blow up a tower, I get a different sound and I get an extra little smoke cloud. And then you'll also notice things like the camera shake are things that have been added in. The fact that you just saw a countdown is something that is not, a default part of the game engine. That's something that you get to build as part of this. As is moving to different levels. So you'll notice I took out all the towers on the first very easy level. Now I've moved on to level 2 and things are a little bit harder. And let's see, that ought to be the last tower. Oh, nope, there's one more over here. And then this is going to take us to level 3. And I didn't do a lot with level design. The actual instructors did a little bit more with it. Some of the other students posted some interesting level designs that I think went further than mine. But you can see I threw together this little fortress. And in a second, they're going to blow me up. And it says defeat. And it'll just reset us back to level, actually the beginning of that level. It doesn't reset us back to level 1. Although you could do that if you wanted to be mean to your players. So things that they cover, I think they do a really good job of covering game mechanics. They're going to cover, how to change levels, how to work with actors. The next section, I think, is going to work with some more advanced autonomy for the other players. Right now, this is a pretty simple logic saying, hey, if the tank gets close, fire at it. So there is some logic here, but it's not too complicated. So I think the next section is going to get into more complex logic. But I think they've done a really good job with this one, and they've done a really good job for people who are, maybe both a beginner on the C++ side and beginners in Unreal. I haven't felt out of my depth with this one. I haven't felt, but I also haven't felt bored. It hasn't felt like everything's being 100% spoon-fed. It's felt like a really good mix of sort of complexity and, but also help to build the project out. Things that they could have included and didn't, and I understand why they didn't. So there's nothing really around things like packaging. So you're going to get a bunch of games that, work in Unreal Engine on your machine. They're not going to tell you how to package those up and send them out to people. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but it is something that you're going to have to learn how to do. And they don't cover anything about things like, graphics settings. Right now this is playing quite smoothly. If I export this and run it on a machine that's a little less heavily built, it's not going to perform very well. It's going to get, really, really choppy because out of the box, things will build with the highest possible settings. So performance tends to be really, really low after you take it out of your development environment. That is something that I need to learn how to do. And I'm sure there's lots of good information out there, but they do not provide that information in the course as far as I've been able to tell. And then finally, I found they're pretty good about, answering questions quickly. Again, it seems to be a team of people who've put this out. You're not waiting on one guy to, maybe notice it after work. At least that is the impression I've gotten. So overall, that experience of having, bought a product and having a good team supporting it has been pretty good. So If you have been thinking about learning Unreal Engine, or you want to play with some C++ and you just need something fun to do to get into that, I am absolutely going to recommend this as a good way to spend that time, or to spend some time. So with that, I'm going to say the course is in the video description. I am not sponsored. I am not getting paid to write this. I am just posting about cool stuff that I'm working on in case it helps you. So I will say until next time.